And meanwhile, the judge is making money on it. The judge is making money on it, or the judge's family's making money on it for stuff that you yourself wouldn't do. You know, no one's going to buy this. No one's going to believe it. It's going to create great disruption. And I am saddened by it because, like you, I have given my life to the law. I care deeply about the law. And I think that the lawfare we've seen against President Trump will do great damage well beyond our time in public service. I see my time's expired. I yield back.
Ranking members recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Attorney General, do you want to respond to anything in Mr. Gaetz's tirade?
I think everything he was talking about was a case in another jurisdiction, an independent prosecutor. Mr. Pomerantz worked for that independent prosecutor. I don't know Mr. Pomerantz. I don't know what's in his book, but these are decisions made in another office independent of the Justice Department.
The House Judiciary Committee, an oversight hearing for the Department of Justice, June 4th, 2024. You heard Matt Gaetz, Republican Congressman from Florida, followed by Jerry Nadler, ranking Democratic member from New York, followed by the witness, President Biden's Attorney General Merrick Garland. President-elect Trump wants Matt Gaetz to replace Merrick Garland as head of the Justice Department. If he does become Attorney General, America's 87th Attorney General, Matt Gaetz likely will appear in front of the House Judiciary Committee, like Merrick Garland did several times before him, when Matt Gaetz was asking questions. And he might face oversight questioning in a style like his own, this time coming from committee Democrats. In this episode of C-SPAN's Podcast A Weekly, we look back at DOJ oversight hearings conducted when Matt Gaetz was asking questions of Merrick Garland, and with a question of our own. Will Democrats sound the same when Attorney General Matt Gaetz is testifying? Keep listening for some clues. 3 Justice Department oversight hearings in the House on C-SPAN during the Biden administration, and 3 times Matt Gaetz had 5-minute exchanges, sometimes heated, with Attorney General Merrick Garland. Let's play each of them in their entirety. First up, October 21st, 2021. At the time, Democrats control the House, and Jerry Nadler is committee chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm very concerned about the influence of lobbyists in Washington, D.C. There's no prohibition against the Department of Justice hiring lobbyists to be prosecutors, is there?
You mean former lobbyists, I hope?
Yes, that's correct.
Oh, there's no prohibition.
And can you describe for us the specific vetting that the department does when professional influence peddlers are hired and given prosecuting authorities?
Well, the hiring of assistant U.S. attorneys this is a career hire made in the different U.S. attorneys' offices.
I mean for the Washington. I mean in Washington at DOJ, are there any special procedures that vet lobbying contracts or maybe who a lobbyist worked for before they're given prosecutorial authority?
So again, I'm not sure what kind of person you're speaking with. If you're talking about line prosecutors, there is a background check. Everybody, I'm sure here is familiar with the SF-86, has to be filled out, includes all the people that you worked for. The same is true in Maine Justice.
But there's no special review for lobbyists as opposed to people who've been engineers or had any other career?
I don't know, but I don't believe there's a difference, but obviously lobbying may raise conflicts.
Let's ask about political consultants. Political consultants are people who get paid to ensure that a candidate wins or loses an election, that a political movement is successful or unsuccessful. Is there any prohibition against hiring political consultants as prosecutors at the department?
Again, I don't think that we're allowed to even look at people's politics. The question...
No. It's not their politics. It's the profession of being a political consultant. There's no special vetting for them,
I don't think that there's a specific prohibition. There is a requirement that once somebody becomes a prosecutor, just like when somebody becomes a judge, that they get rid of whatever preconceptions they had before and that they go forward under their new responsibilities and are subject to the ethics rules of their new responsibilities.
We would hope that would be the case, Mr. Attorney General, but I tend to think that if people are in the influence peddling game or they're prosecutors, it can be kind of dangerous to mix those, to be an influence peddler for hire one day, to be a prosecutor the next, maybe to rotate back and forth among those careers. And it sounds like there's no special vetting for lobbyists or political consultants. Let me ask the question about partisan committee staff. We have partisan committee staff that you see here. Their job is to ensure that one party or another preserves or captures the majority, that legislative proposals are successful or not successful. No prohibition against the department hiring partisan committee staff as prosecutors, is there?
As I understand it, every administration, including the one preceding this one, has hired people who have been committee staff.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a statutory limitation. If the House of Representatives and the Senate think that partisan, or I'm not sure what
That's how Preet Bharara got his job. He worked for Schumer, and then he ended up in the Southern District. So we have people who can be lobbyists and then prosecutors. We have people who can be political consultants and then prosecutors. We have people who can be partisan committee staff and then prosecutors. The public integrity section has jurisdiction over election integrity, correct?
It has jurisdiction over election crimes, yes.
Yes. So is there any prohibition against people who've been lobbyists, partisan committee staff, or political consultants actually going in and serving in the public integrity section, or is that allowed?
Just say again, the hiring in the public integrity section is a career hire made under the civil service. It's not made.
I know, I'm worried about their prior career, though. See, what I think is that if someone has been a political operative, to then put them in charge of election crimes, it's kind of like having the fox guard the hen house, don't you think?
So if you think that, that would be a perfect example of something the House should pass a statute barring people from particular professions from working in the Justice Department.
And would you support that legislation?
I'd have to look at what it is, and I have to look at whether it itself violates the First Amendment, but I don't think there have ever been any restrictions like that before.
I appreciate your open-mindedness, and I hope that persists during your time at the department. Would you provide the committee a list of lobbyists, former lobbyists, or just former political consultants who work in the public integrity section, so that we might inform on the legislation that you've suggested we might consider?
I don't intend to create a list of career officials and what their previous jobs were.
So if there are people who literally were political operatives who have prosecuting authority in the area that oversees elections, you won't give us the list.
I don't have any idea whether there is any such person.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
Next, September 20th, 2023. For this oversight hearing, Republicans control the House, and the committee chairman is Jim Jordan. It was Attorney General Garland's first appearance before the House Judiciary Committee since the department's special counsel brought 2 criminal indictments against former President Trump, and the DOJ appointed a special counsel in the investigation into Hunter Biden's tax case. Here's the 5-minute exchange between Matt Gaetz and Attorney General Garland.
I guess I'm just wondering, Mr. Attorney General, has anyone at the department told President Biden to knock it off with Hunter? I mean, you guys are charging Hunter Biden on some crimes, investigating him on others. You've got the president bringing Hunter Biden around to state dinners. Has anyone told him to knock it off?
Our job in the Justice Department is to pursue our cases without reference to what's happening in the outside world.
Just yes or no. Have you done that?
That is what we do.
So it's a no?
No one that I know of has spoken to the White House about the Hunter Biden case.
I'm wondering then.
Of course not.
Okay, I got it. So Hunter Biden is selling art to pay for his $15,000 a month rent in Malibu. How can you guarantee that the people buying that art aren't doing so to gain favor with the president?
The job of the Justice Department is to investigate criminal allegations. You have information.
Are you investigating this? I mean, someone who bought Hunter Biden's art ended up with a prestigious appointment to a federal position. Doesn't it look weird that he's become this immediate success in the art world as his dad is president of the United States? Isn't that odd?
I'm not going to comment about any specific...
Not going to comment, not going to investigate. So
right.
Hunter Biden associate Devin Archer told us that Hunter sold the appearance of access to then Vice President Biden. Are you confident he has stopped doing that?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Hunter Biden associate Devin Archer told us that Hunter sold the appearance of access to then Vice President Biden. Are you confident he has stopped?
I'm going to say again that all these matters are within the purview of Mr. Weiss. I have not interfered with them, and I do not...
Yeah, but if you were confident that he had stopped, you could...
And I do not intend to interfere with him.
So it was a lot of Chinese money that was working its way through these shell companies into the accounts of the Biden family. So the China initiative was set up during the Trump administration at the Department of Justice to go after the malign influence of the Chinese Communist Party. And the Biden Justice Department dissolved the China initiative. So I guess I'm wondering, does the department have any documents that would detail the basis for why you got rid of the China initiative that President Trump had set up?
The Assistant Attorney General of the National Security Division gave a long speech which explained that. He has testified before Congress several times. We'd be happy to provide you with...
What's the basis? Just tell us all now. Why was the China initiative dissolved?
What the Assistant Attorney General said was that we face attacks from 4 nation states: North Korea, China, Russia, and Iran, and that we need to focus our attention on the broad range of these attacks. Sometimes we don't know.
Wait a second. Are you saying that North Korea has the same malign influence risk to the United States as the Chinese Communist Party? Are you trying to represent there's some parity there? Because here's what it looks like. It looks like the Chinese gave all this money to the Bidens, and then you guys came in and got rid of the China initiative, and it was successful. Like, I saw one rationale that you guys got rid of the China initiative because it was racial profiling. But one of the people you convicted was a guy named Charles Lieber, who was a Harvard professor taking $50,000 a month to do China's bidding and give them whatever research was being done. Are you aware of the millions of dollars that moved through Rob Walker's shell companies from Chinese Communist Party entities into Biden family bank accounts? Are you aware of that?
There were a lot of questions that you just asked. Let me start with the first one about North Korea. North Korea is a dangerous actor, both kinetically and with respect to cyber.
But not on par with China. I'm on the Armed Services
Committee,
Committee,
Mr. Attorney General. I'm not in the business right now of...
It makes you look unserious to suggest that.
May I answer your question or not?
Answer the question about whether or not you know about all the millions of dollars that moved
you
through
don't
Rob
want me to
Walker's
answer about North Korea?
I already know the answer, and so does everyone. They're not the same risk as China. So let's get on to serious questions and serious answers. Do you know about the money that moved through Rob Walker's shell companies, yes or no?
As I have said repeatedly, I have left these matters to Mr. Weiss. I've not intruded. I've not interfered. I've not tried to find out what he knows.
It's like you're looking the other way on purpose because everybody knows this stuff's happening. And you know what? People don't pay bribes to not get something in return. Right? The China initiative resulted in the convictions of a Harvard professor, of someone at Monsanto. So we were working against the Chinese. They paid the Bidens, and now you're sitting here telling me that North Korea is the big threat. I got to get to this one thing on January 6th. So did the FBI lose count of the number of paid informants on January 6th?
Let me answer your question about China.
I want you to answer this question. I only get 5 minutes. You've already sort of, I think, screwed the pooch on China. So January 6th, did you lose count of the number of federal assets? Did you lose count and order an audit?
Gentleman's time has expired.
I get an answer to the question of did they lose count?
No, let him answer the question.
The time has expired. The Attorney General can respond.
China is the most aggressive, most dangerous adversary that the United States faces, and we are doing everything within our power to rebut that, to stop that, to prevent their invasions, both kinetic, and through cyberspace, and we will continue to do that.
If someone gave that answer in your courtroom when you were a judge, you would tell them they were being non-responsive, and you would direct them to answer the question.
Point of order, Your Honor.
Time is
badgering the witness.
Point of order, has expired.
Later in that hearing, it's Steve Cohen's turn. The Democratic congressman from Tennessee asks Attorney General Garland about Matt Gaetz.
And they say the department's been weaponized. Wasn't there an investigation of Mr. Gaetz and you didn't prosecute him?
Justice Department does not make comments about its investigation.
Well, it shows we're not weaponized. If we were weaponized, we'd have done it. That was a beautiful exchange there. It shows we didn't do that.
Now, June 4th, 2024. The big news coming out of that House Judiciary Oversight hearing was Attorney General Garland firing back at House Republicans. He said he and DOJ will not be intimidated with threats of being held in contempt of Congress. The issue was the department's refusal to turn over audio tapes of President Biden's March 2024 interview with the special counsel. It was part of an investigation into whether President Biden mishandled classified documents. Here's the approach Congressman Gaetz took during his 5 minutes with the Attorney General.
Attorney General, you've told us that it's a dangerous conspiracy theory to allege that the Department of Justice is communicating with these state and local prosecutions against Trump. You can clear it all up for us right now. Will the Department of Justice provide to the committee all documents, all correspondence between the department and Alvin Bragg's office and Fonnie Willis's office and Letitia James's office.
The offices you're referring to are independent offices of state.
I get that. I get that.
State.
The question is whether or not you will provide all of your documents and correspondence. That's the question. I don't need a history lesson.
Well, I'm going to say again, we do not control those offices. They make their own decisions.
The question is whether you communicate with them, not whether you control them. Do you communicate with them, and will you provide those
If you
communications?
make a request, we'll refer it to our Office of Legislative Affairs.
But see, here's the thing.
They
You
will
come in
respond
here and you
appropriately.
lodge this attack that it's a conspiracy theory, that there is coordinated lawfare against Trump. And then when we say, fine, just give us the documents, give us the correspondence, and then if it's a conspiracy theory, that will be evident. But when you say, well, we'll take your request, and then we'll sort of work it through the DOJ's accommodation process, then you're actually advancing the very dangerous conspiracy theory that you're concerned about. Now, you were a judge, once nominated the highest court in our country. When you were a judge, I'm just curious, did you ever make political donations to partisan candidates?
No.
No, and you didn't, because that would create the potential appearance of impropriety.
I didn't, because there's a federal rule
Oh.
barring federal judges from making contributions.
Right, but under that same theory of attacks on the judicial process, like, shouldn't someone be owed like a jury of their peers and a judge that's non-biased, rather than getting a judge from your political opponent's donor file?
I'm well aware that you're not asking a hypothetical. You're asking me to comment on a jury verdict in another jurisdiction which has to be respected. I won't comment on it. That case is still ongoing. The defendant
Mr. Attorney General, I hadn't asked you about the verdict yet. We were getting there. I was talking about the judge. And so let me ask you this question about your time as a judge. Was there ever a time when you were a judge when you had a family member who was personally profiting off of the notoriety of a case that was before your court?
I'm going to say again, it's very clear you're asking me to comment on a case in another jurisdiction.
No, wait, hold on, Mr. Attorney General. Did you ever have a family member profit off of the notoriety of any case that you sat over?
Say again, you're asking
Yes or no?
me, you're asking me to comment on a case currently.
Well, it seems you're
before
connecting the
another
dots,
court.
Mr. Attorney General. I'm just asking you as to a general principle, but you are aware that Judge Merchan's daughter was profiting off of this prosecution. You are aware that that creates the appearance of impropriety. You know the very reason there's a federal rule against judges giving donations is because it is the very attack on the judicial process that we're concerned about.
I'm sorry, I don't agree with anything you just said, but I'm not going to comment on an
Okay,
on an
so you
action
won't
in
comment
another
on it, Mr.
court.
Attorney General, but you had no problem dispatching Matthew Colangelo. Who's Matthew Colangelo?
That is false. I did not dispatch Matthew Colangelo.
Matthew
That's
Colangelo,
false.
Colangelo became the Assistant Attorney General at the very beginning of the Biden administration. Without having been Senate confirmed, goes and gets this senior role at the DOJ, and then after, I believe it's Gupta replaces Colangelo, Colangelo makes this remarkable downstream career journey from the U.S. Department of Justice in Washington, D.C., and then pops up in Alvin Bragg's office to go get Trump. And you're saying that's just a career choice that was made that has nothing to do with the lawfare coordinated by the
Saying it's false. I did not dispatch Mr. Colangelo anywhere.
Well, do you know how he ended up there?
I assume he applied for a job there and got the job.
But see, you know what?
I can tell you I had nothing to do with it.
Well, you might not have had anything to do with it, but we've got this contemporaneous evidence in Mr. Pomerantz's book. So Pomerantz writes this book, which I'm sure you're aware of, where he says, we put together the legal eagles to get Trump. We got all these folks together and we assembled them for that purpose. And so when we on the Judiciary Committee think about attacks on the judicial process, our concern is that the facts and the law aren't being followed. A target is acquired, here, Trump, and then you assemble the legal talent from DOJ, Mr. Pomerantz, and you bring everybody in to get him. And meanwhile, the judge is making money on it. The judge is making money on it, or the judge's family's making money on it for stuff that you yourself wouldn't do. You know, no one's going to buy this. No one's going to believe it. It's going to create great disruption. And I am saddened by it because, like you, I have given my life to the law. I care deeply about the law, and I think that the lawfare we've seen against President Trump will do great damage well beyond our time in public service. I see my time's expired. I yield back.
And a footnote to that clip, that's the very exchange that Democratic Congressman Nadler described as a tirade in the clip you heard at the beginning of this podcast. Meantime, during that hearing, 2 other Democrats on the committee took shots at Matt Gaetz. First, here's Steve Cohen again, and making a similar point to the one he made a year earlier.
I noticed Mr. Gaetz, who took you on first, is not here now. And that's unfortunate because he is living testament to the fact and direct evidence that you have not weaponized the Justice Department. He was investigated for sex trafficking, and while many expected a prosecution, you chose not to prosecute this very active Republican. Is that true? You did not prosecute him?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what is in the public record and what's not, so I'm just not going to comment on that.
And second, here's California Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell.
Mr. Attorney General, last week it was reported that House Ethics Panel subpoenas DOJ for Gaetz records. It was a May 14, 2024 political piece. I'd like to submit it to the record with unanimous consent.
Without objection.
I just want to get this straight. Mr. Gaetz wants the Attorney General to reopen and publicize evidence from an investigation that a Donald Trump-appointed prosecutor closed against President Biden, while at the same time, Mr. Gaetz himself is being protected by the same DOJ policy that is refusing to voluntarily turn over evidence from Mr. Gaetz's sex trafficking investigation. Mr. Attorney General, can you just briefly, without going into the facts of that case, address why that is the DOJ policy as it relates to the current president and any other requests about closed investigations?
Yeah, without referencing any case, we try to protect the law enforcement files of the Justice Department so that in future investigations, people are willing to cooperate with us. We understand Congress's concerns, and we have an obligation to assess whether the information that we've provided is sufficient to accommodate the legitimate needs of the Congress.
And now, a bonus clip. Back to the September 20th, 2023 Oversight hearing. Attorney General Garland is testifying and asking the question in this clip, not Matt Gaetz. It's Louisiana Republican Congressman Mike Johnson.
Have you had personal contact with anyone at FBI headquarters about the Hunter Biden investigation?
I don't recollect the answer to that question, but the FBI works for the Justice Department. It's.
I'm sorry. You don't recollect. You don't recollect whether you've talked with anybody at FBI headquarters about an investigation of the president's son?
I don't believe that I did. I promised the Senate when I came before it for confirmation that I would leave Mr. Weiss in place and that I would not interfere with his investigation.
Okay.
I have kept that promise.
All right. Have you had personal contact with anybody at the Baltimore field office on the Hunter Biden matter?
No.
On July 10, 2023, U.S. Attorney David Weiss told Senator Lindsey Graham, quote, I had discussions with departmental officials regarding potential appointment under 28 U.S.C. Section 515, which would have allowed me to file charges in a district outside my own without the partnership of the local U.S. attorney, end quote. With whom did Mr. Weiss have those discussions?
I'm not going to get into the internal deliberations of the department.
But you must, sir. This is important for us. We have oversight responsibility over your department, and we need these answers.
35 days after that exchange, Mike Johnson was elected Speaker of the House. That's it for this episode of The Weekly. A reminder, you can do your own searches in the C-SPAN video library. Find more times former Representative Matt Gaetz questioned witnesses appearing before the House Judiciary Committee, like July 28, 2020. It was another Department of Justice oversight hearing, but it was a different Attorney General. This time, a Republican, President Trump's Attorney General, William Barr.
Mr. Attorney General, you've described the prosecution of Roger Stone as righteous. That's clearly something that the President and I disagree with you on. I would suggest that perhaps the prosecution of Andrew McCabe, who lied 4 times, thrice under the penalty of perjury, would be more righteous. I would suggest to you that uncovering the criminal conspiracy that existed where people in our own government were trying to convince intelligence agents and operatives around the world to destabilize our elections and to discredit our president would perhaps be more righteous.
Thanks for listening to C-SPAN's The Weekly Podcast. If you like this podcast, be sure to subscribe, tell your friends, and follow us on X at C-SPAN Radio.